You know, this wasn't exactly how I planned on coming out, but c'est la vie. LGBT representation has been making strides within the past few years, especially on television. We've seen an uprise in more gay, bisexual, transgender, and even some more non-binary characters. But one group that could stand to see some more representation, at least in my humble opinion, is the asexual community. For those of you who aren't familiar, if you identify as asexual, that means you don't experience sexual attraction. At least not in the way society expects us to. But what's important to remember is that asexuality exists on a spectrum, so one asexual person might have a different experience from another. But what's important to remember is that no matter how we choose to express it, it's going to be the same thing at its core. We don't experience sexual attraction.
My name is Caitlin Lucas. I go by they, them pronouns. I am asexual. For me, you don't want to be involved in anything sexual. And it's just one of those things where it's just like, it's different for everyone. And for me, it's just, I find sex icky.
Yeah. One thing that's going to be crucial to remember is that being asexual is different from being aromantic, which is a lack of romantic attraction. While I will touch on it here and there throughout the course of this video, bear in mind that every time I say asexual, or ace, I'm specifically referring to the lack of sexual attraction. Though I'm not here to debate whether or not asexuality is real, it is. As it becomes more widely known, members of the asexual community, like myself, would like to see some more representation of characters like us in the TV shows we watch. But before we reach that point, it's important to take a critical look at the representation we have right now, because while it's there, there's some things that we can improve on. Sheldon Cooper is from the sitcom The Big Bang Theory, which is a TV series that follows a group of nerds as they go about their everyday lives. The series ran from 2007 to 2019, spanned across 12 different seasons, and has 280 episodes. Wait a second. Is that right? While Sheldon has never been confirmed to be asexual, it's still an important piece of history to talk about in terms of early asexual representation. Partly because show creator Chuck Lorre gave this statement about him back in 2010, when the series was still in its third and fourth seasons.
Part of what's wonderful and unique about Sheldon is he has chosen not to play in the relationship game either way. Heterosexual, homosexual, bisexual, any sexuality. He has said, "This is not for me. I am a scientist. All I'm interested in is science and what George Lucas thinks."
I mean, you just can't say stuff like that and expect people not to read into it.
Sheldon acknowledges throughout the show that he understands sex and romance, but largely doesn't experience those feelings himself. When he enters a romantic relationship with Amy Fowler in Season 4, sex doesn't become a part of their love life until Season 9. And even then, it usually only occurs on her birthday, or on the rare occasion where he wants to do so out of love for her rather than for himself.
I want to mention Sheldon because, in some ways, he's actually a good piece of asexual representation. A common misunderstanding about asexual people is that we never enter romantic relationships, much less have sex. But like Sheldon demonstrates, some asexual people actually end up in romantic relationships, even with people who aren't asexual, and they do have sex. We have a few different terms in the asexual community to describe these different attitudes towards having sex. When most people think about asexual people, they have this idea that we are sex repulsed, which means we're just grossed out by sex. But some people, like Sheldon, are what we would call sex indifferent or sex neutral, which means they may not mind it.
Like, if they're in a relationship with that person, they might want to have sex with that person, and then the person might want to have sex with them. Consent's important, and it's not coercion, but they'll want to have it, but it's not like their favorite thing, or it's not something they think about every day.
The problem with Sheldon arises when you take his asexuality and put it into the context of his full character. At that point, we start entering a few negative implications.
Some of Sheldon's prominent traits are a general lack of empathy for others and the tendency to be conceited, stubborn, and a condescending jerk to his loved ones.
But you don't think I'm condescending, do you?
Well...
Oh, I'm sorry. Condescending...
I know what it means!
Even if he's never identified as asexual, people can still make the association between self-identifying asexuals and somebody like Sheldon who's just canonically not interested in sex.
There are nuanced conversations to be had about how asexuality might affect the way somebody forms relationships, but This isn't how you do it. Moving away from live action, SpongeBob SquarePants is a cartoon series that started in 1999 and has been running for 10 seasons. Like many cartoons of the time, there's not really an overarching plot, but it mostly focuses on the Sponge's many misadventures throughout the underwater city of Bikini Bottom. And yes, he's canonically asexual. The late creator Stephen Hillenburg, God rest his soul, gave this statement about SpongeBob back in 2012 when he was questioned whether or not the sponge was gay.
Everybody is different, and the show embraces that. The character SpongeBob is an oddball. He's kind of weird, but he's kind of special. I always think of the characters as being somewhat asexual.
The fact that it's specifically on Stephen Hillenburg's short list of no's to ever give SpongeBob a girlfriend, I mean, come on, that's amazing. Obviously, this is something that's never directly been stated in the show. I mean, it's Nickelodeon. What do you think this is? Cartoon Network? But bearing this in mind, once you look at how SpongeBob is presented to the audience, he actually starts to become a pretty good asexual icon. For the first few seasons,
SpongeBob is shown to be very happy with himself and his life, and he never has a serious romantic relationship. Unless you count the time he had a day-long affair with a Krabby Patty. And I don't. He's passionate about his job, enjoys his hobbies, and he has several meaningful platonic relationships, including with women. And in sharp contrast to Sheldon's character, SpongeBob is a very loving person. He shows kindness and compassion to everybody, including to those who don't return it. And he helps others in his life find success with their own romance.
Buy! Spend!
so what's the problem? Well, the fact that SpongeBob is asexual has only really become public knowledge since 2020, back during Pride Month. And remember, this show started in 1999. It's older than me. Now, while Stephen Hillenburg probably didn't mean anything ill about this statement, equating asexuality to being an oddball trait and weird, not a good look, Chief. Then again, it was 2005. That's fairly understandable. No one was perfect back in 2005. Certainly not me. But what we should talk about is how SpongeBob in 2005 is a very different character from SpongeBob in 2021. Older SpongeBob episodes often portrayed him as being innocent, but still responsible with some youthful tendencies. I mean, sure, he can't drive a boat and is a major comic book geek, but then again, that's just what the average millennial is like. But he still acted like an adult who could fulfill his responsibilities, he had his own personal motivations, and he could stand up for himself when it came down to it. But if you've spent time with modern episodes of SpongeBob like I have...
No! Unstop my toe!
What can I say but yikes? Sometimes asexual people are infantilized, treated like a child, because they don't like to have sex. Some people might equate this with them not understanding sex, much in the way a child may not. And this can be damaging to an asexual adult's identity or their own understanding of themselves.
It's problematic because it's similar to the I fix you thing where it completely negates our autonomy because, like, we are not children. We understand things, but people decide that they don't. And the whole, like, not understanding sex part, I don't think anyone truly understands sex. It's one of those things where it's just like, they're trying to say, you don't understand this thing, when no one understands this thing. Everyone just has preconceived notions of this thing, and we don't fit into those preconceived notions.
Again, I don't think this was Stephen Hillenburg's intention back in 2002, but it's still important to take a look at SpongeBob before somebody takes a look at this and decides to replicate it. God, I do not want to be associated with that. Jughead Jones is a character originally from the Archie comics, which have been running since 1939. What the fuck?
Jughead first debuted in December 1941, and was originally portrayed as being more of a misogynistic character who would rather be eating than bother with dating women. Or anybody for that matter. But in the rebooted version of the Archie comics, which started in 2015, Jughead Jones is confirmed to be asexual and aromantic. There's even a minor arc where he panics because he's going on a date with Sabrina and didn't even realize that it's a date.
A common fluke when portraying queer characters is to make their sexuality their only defining trait. Think of the gay best friend trope for this. But not Jughead.
He's a big eater, sarcastic, loyal to his friends, apparently pretty smart, and he just so happens to be asexual.
No lie, when I first saw this comic panel, I got the biggest smile on my face because it is so rare for somebody who's asexual and aromantic to have their sexuality this explicitly stated in text. It's great! But then CW, the same channel that decided to queerbait its audience for 15 years, they got their hands on Jughead and they put him in Riverdale.
Jughead Jones.
Yes, Jughead Jones in the comics is an aromantic asexual, and in Riverdale, they were just like, what's that?
Aside from making Jughead into a serious brooding boy over here, they also decided to pair him up with Betty. And they had sex in the 25th episode in January 2018. Yes, I looked this up.
And it's not like the showrunners weren't aware of this before Riverdale aired. Cole Sprouse, Jughead's actor, even talks about his asexuality in an interview.
There are two forms of representation Jughead has received over time. In Zdarsky's Jughead, he's asexual. That's the only Jughead where he is asexual. He's aromantic in the digest, which is a different thing, but deserves attention as well. But what I found when I was really diving in, because once we started putting Jughead and Betty together, I started doing research to see if that was a narrative that even existed in the digest. And it turns out it is. It's a narrative that's existed for a long time. There are a handful of digests in which Jughead would say things like, oh, Betty, if I did like women, I guarantee you would be the one I would marry outright.
But they still had sex. And now I have all Bughead sex scenes stuck forever in my YouTube search history. Now even the creator of the rebooted comic book series, Chip Zdarsky, says that due to the nature of comic books, it's expected to have a character's sexual orientation change up every now and then. And to a certain degree, I can agree with that. But there are already so few asexual characters in media, and even less of aromantic ones. It kind of feels like a kick in the teeth to have it taken away from us.
Sex is so ingrained into our culture for some reason that the idea of not having it confuses a lot of people, and they would rather be ignorant and think that it doesn't exist than think about it. You know what? I will kind of give them like this much wiggle room on that, because shows can be in production long before they like start and before they're announced. However, they erased kind of a key characterization of Jughead Jones, which is he isn't interested in anybody. People like come to him for advice, and he's like, why would I be interested in that? We had something, and then a show geared towards horny teenagers said no.
And obviously not all of us are horny teenagers.
And obviously not all of us are horny teenagers.
You know it's going to be bad when they're listed as this in the Wikipedia article. House MD is a medical drama that ran from 2004 to 2012 and had 8 different seasons. It stars Dr. Gregory House, an abrasive, arrogant doctor who spends the series solving strange medical mysteries that no other doctor can explain. You might see where this is going.
The asexual couple appears in the 8th and final season of the show, and only in one episode, Better Half, as a side plot. One of the other doctors meets a woman who says she's asexual along with her husband, and says that they've never had sex. But Dr. House doesn't believe that, and places a bet that he can find a medical reason for why they don't want to have sex. He looks into hormone levels, possible injuries that might have impeded their libido, or that maybe it's just a psychological reason. He even tricks the husband to come in underneath the false pretense of a flu shot to get a better look at him.
Can you guess how this ends? Go on. Guess.
So it turns out the woman was actually lying the whole time about her being asexual just so that she could still be with her asexual husband. But as it turns out, he's only asexual because of a tumor that impeded his sexual drive, and it could easily be fixed with some dopamine agonists, whatever the hell those are. Once the tumor shrinks, well, the problem is solved. Not only is the man's life saved, his asexuality is fixed, and he's having a healthy sex life with his wife once again. Yay!
And you want to know the worst part about all of this? This is one of the first times that asexuality is mentioned so explicitly on mainstream media. And they don't even treat us as asexuals. They treat us as an issue to be fixed. I hate it here! My disappointment is immeasurable and my day is ruined. I can't even drink, I have to settle for grape juice.
When you talk to asexual people online, a common occurrence is the I can fix you kind of mentality, where people think, oh, you just need one round of good sex and you're good. You're not asexual anymore. And it's a problem because it completely negates who we are as people in a way, because it completely disregards our feelings on the subject. Basically feels like you don't see us as people because you are completely crossing our boundaries. We are not made to be fixed.
Asexual people can feel pressure to enter sexual relationships because that's what society expects us to do. But by giving ourselves a label to identify ourselves with, such in the way that a gay person might or a bisexual person might, it gives us a way to easily communicate what it is we want in a relationship, or more specifically, don't want. So when mainstream media portrays us as being ill or just lying, it makes it that much more likely that somebody is going to think that we are either mistaken, invalidate our identities, and think that our sexuality is something that needs to be fixed. House MD honestly might be one of the worst pieces of asexual representation. Don't do what House did. It should be said that the examples I've already given today are only a handful, and arguably the most controversial ones. But there is good asexual representation out there, and personally stuff that makes me super happy.
One of the most notable examples is Todd Chavez from BoJack Horseman. He identifies as asexual, and even has an episode where he comes out. This is established further in other episodes where he attends an asexual support group and even starts dating another asexual woman, Yolanda. And Peridot from Steven Universe is also asexual and aromantic. At least that's what a storyboard artist said. While it would have been nice to have it mentioned on screen, she's still a fully realized character with drive, she's hilarious, and she still has her own story arc that makes her stand out from the rest of the cast.
What would good asexual representation be like? At least for you.
For me, it would probably be the character I was talking about in Sex Education, where it's acknowledged, they maybe don't understand it, but know what they want. And most importantly, they're human. Give us someone who has emotions, first of all, and second of all, someone that we can connect to.
But those examples are few and far between. Our identity is very easy to overlook because compared to other members of the LGBT community, it's very easy for us to pass in straight society. Even asexual people may not even realize that there is a word for what they experience because they never see themselves in television.
For me, I didn't realize that what I was feeling was normal for some people until I was graduating high school. I was a month out of graduation. I had been with my currently ex for almost 3 years, and seeing myself on screen definitely, I think, would have helped me realize that this is who I am, and this is just kind of what happens.
Not every asexual character is going to be good or well written, but every little step matters. Because for every new asexual character that makes it onto screen, well, that might just be the one character that someone needs to see for everything to finally click.
We're here, we exist. I know you don't see us a lot in media or on TV or in movies, but we exist, we're thriving, we're living our best lives. Just like for people of other sexualities, it's important to be able to figure out who you are.